The biggest challenge we always face is how do we balance the enterprise-wide need and that consistency with what each, business or function needs, with what each individual needs.
Hello, welcome everyone. I am delighted to be joined today by Sara Dionne. Sara is the Chief Learning Officer for Comcast, where she leads all learning and initiatives for the enterprise. Sara has had a long career at Comcast through many different roles, and most recently has been working on leading a really data-driven approach to skills-based talent development. And that's what I'm delighted to talk with you a little bit further about today, Sara. So thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me, Hannah. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Great. So I know you really took this data-driven approach, the bull by the horn, so to speak, and we're asking the question, what skills do you need to deliver to the business? And that's what the kind of the project was set out. Can you share the story of how you have migrated the organization to a skills-based organization?
Absolutely. And, we really took a bit of a more organic approach and started where we thought it made most sense for our employees. So we started by aligning the development we had to certain skills. And then the talent, my peers, quickly followed with how do we now insert them into the hiring process, right? So we built upon the successes we were having. And I think as we started shifting into more of a skill-based talent development model, we realized we had to catalyze something to really support that evolution. And so for us, we branded it Skill Forward. And we're about 3-4 years in now of Skill Forward. And this is where we have started building skill-based learning that is completely driven by business priorities. And that's where the data piece comes into play for us. And it has shifted us into an enterprise level kind of integration of skills when it comes to development. And so when I think about what does this mean, for us, it meant we started talking in the first year, we were at maybe 1,100 business leaders. And this past go round, we were at close to a little over 3,000. And starting by saying, what do you have to achieve? What is that business goal or business priority that you have to achieve now? And then, in the future. And from there, we said, what skills do you need in order for that to happen within your organization? And we used all of that data to say, this is what we heard from you on what the organization needs skill-wise. Over the years, what we have built into that is this year we used, what are they asking for during that hiring process? All of the external research that's out there around what skills are needed into the future. We used company goals and strategies, all of that together with the business leader data to come to our what do we need to do next. And so we use all this data, and that is what gets embedded into our Skill Forward program to be able to build those development plans in the focus areas across the business.
Thank you. It's fascinating. I hadn't realized there was this kind of 3-4 year journey that you're on. So it's good to have this chance to connect now that you've hopefully been learning, because I can imagine it's not always been a smooth road where you are. And what were perhaps some of the more unique challenges that you encountered in bringing from moving from 100 business leaders to 3,000 business leaders on this journey with you? Because that's fantastic.
Yeah. And for us in a company of our size and scale, the biggest challenge we always face is how do we balance the enterprise-wide need and that consistency with what each, business or function needs, with what each individual needs. It's a lot to be able to balance because you can't come out with a personalized learning for every single human, although we're working on that over time. But when you're in a heavily matrix organization, for us, that was our unique challenge because Skill Forward had to resonate across all of these different groups. And that can range from like a technician on our front line to somebody in HR, right? To somebody in an operational role. So we have a wide range that we have to bring skills out to develop, but we need to make sure that it fits for them and that there's context for them in what they do every day and what their, strategic direction may be, depending on where they sit in the organization. And so one of the ways that we've done this, because this is 100% a journey, for us is that we've started to embed skill forward and that skill development into business plans and business operating rhythms. So if a certain something is happening, that's when we hit with maybe a skill, right? And make those alignments and work with all of those leaders to embed that in. But it is 100% a journey. So we still have a long way to go to continue to figure out how do you get closer and closer to personalization of learning.
Absolutely. One thing that we talk a lot about at Iventive sessions in the Iventive community is this kind of personalization at scale. How do you ensure every learner still feels like that it is bespoke and happening for them, not just
Mhm.
to them? Because it can be, it can be intimidating when you hear, your HR leaders or your business leaders that are ultimately in charge of how your career progresses, how your stability is guaranteed,
Yeah.
using a new kind of language, talking about, well, are you skilled in this? And that's, I suppose, it's a weighted word as well. Did you find anything kind of, was there a challenge in bringing the business along on the language of a skills-based organization?
Yeah, so interestingly, no. I think the language of skills is what really resonates with people. Everyone knows what a skill is. Sometimes, like when we were using competency language, it was a little bit more, where does a competency end or where does it begin? And skill is a unique, right? It's a unique, it's single, you add it to your toolkit. So we didn't struggle from the standpoint of the language and those concepts. I do think that one of the challenges, and you just said something about it, is that how do you assess all these skills? And assessment of skills is something that I know a lot of companies are challenged by, especially at volume, because I could gain a new skill in a day because, I have maybe taken a webinar or finished a project or something I've never done. I think I got the skill, which is what you were just saying, but does my leader? Maybe, maybe not. And how do we build that piece in? So that's another challenge that we're faced with that we are going to continue to start trying to figure out and solve for.
I guess that's also the return on the investment of skills as well. Like how long before a skill becomes a reliable, something in the business like that is the go
Yeah.
on that. I think
Because the shelf life of these skills too is not what it once was. We're talking single digit, a couple of years to a year and a half, where it used to be that your shelf life of a skill might be 5 to 10 years. That pace of skill change, or even how one might define that skill, is rapidly, rapidly going.
we could have this same conversation. I mean, 2 months in next week.
Correct.
There'd be a new large language model. There'd be a new kind of way of thinking about it. There'd be new emerging skills. Is there, and because you mentioned that it being a journey, and that you are, you're not at the end of that journey, or maybe even just a
No.
potential that it could be. What is the next step for you then? Is it this assessment piece,
Mhm.
really nailing that, what you're doing in that space?
Yeah, so I think a couple of next steps, there's how can technology help us? How can it help us with personalization? How can it help us when it comes to assessment? I think one of the next steps when it comes to the skills themselves that excites me the most is that we're seeing this convergence now of the human skills and the technology skills, where historically we look at them maybe as separate initiatives versus a holistic skill capability. So, you'd have the digital fluency, then you'd have leadership, or you'd have, people skills. But we're starting to see those boundaries dissolve. So, especially as we lean into AI literacy and how, whether it's just how do you understand what AI is, or how do you understand prompting, that technical upskilling, we're starting to see that we have to pair it with the other side. So for example, as we're looking at, Q1 coming up, we say AI literacy has to start coming with like change agility and trust, based collaboration, because if I'm a leader, I need to learn what that, AI or, whatever the technology I need to learn is. But now I have to navigate the disruption that's about to bring. And I need to give confidence to that, to my workforce, and bring empathy, because we're all going to be part of that journey together, changing. So that is one of the things that I'm starting to really see that excites me, because it feels like we're kind of all cultivating this in a more inclusive way to drive the type of, high performing teams that we need with skills that are really very integrated.
Mhm. one thing I've come back to a lot with conversations over the year is preparing people for not BAU but CAU, change
Yeah.
as we're in a constant shifting environment. And I think, to your point, that comes from both the technology and just how you have to approach that. So those human skills of agility, adaptability, discernment in the there's a certain sense of consistency you need to have amid change, which is technology. There will be something else we have to understand, we have to grapple with. I need to
Even the empathy, right? As a leader, it's different than it once was. And if you don't have that, all the technology in the world is not going to drive your business goal because you need the people to be part of that technology to make that happen.
I think for me, and especially when we have conversations around, well, there's been, these many jobs will be automated, these many skills, have a shorter shelf life. I'm really trying to think, because those numbers can look scary. I try and think of the other side of the coin, which is, well, if there's X amount of jobs that are going to be automated, why are X amount not? What is it that is human about them that
Mhm.
we really need to focus on honing in, and keep pace with that development? And it's great to hear, the numbers that you shared, that those business leaders are buying in at Comcast to you and partnering with you.
Yes.
I'd be curious then, so you're at this point now, are there any, what skills does Comcast need?
Yeah. So as I think about us going into 2026 and sort of all the data analysis we just did that I talked about earlier, I think the skills that we're really seeing are those that have to enable transformation. We all have to agree it's something's happening. Foster inclusion. How are we going to do that together, bringing all the, diverse opinions together, and then all to drive the business outcomes that we need. And this, we're going to be in a new world. We are already starting in that new world, transformed by AI. And how do we get there? So, when I think about the year we're coming out of, our focus was really around change, agility, and innovation, project management and prioritization and influence. But when I think about 2026, this is where I really start to see that confluence of the digital with the human. Our focus areas are going to be around AI literacy and tools, which I can assume most companies have, right? How do you build the technical fluency, the ethical awareness, the adaptability that has to come? But then we move into process optimization. So you've got this, but now what, right? How are you using it? How do you enable? How do you simplify? What is that systems thinking that you need? Then we'll be shifting into vision and goal alignment. So this is really around how do we lead through kind of these moments? How do we plan strategically and foster accountability against that plan within our teams? And then the last is around human and digital teaming. So this is like the biggest confluence of, okay, we've got teammates now that are AI, whether it's an agent or you're just using, a co-pilot or a chat GPT. How do you cultivate all of that together? And what does that skill look like? So we're really excited about kind of bringing some different things to the table to help the business move forward.
It's definitely an exciting time, and I think it's really interesting to see how that you have, not only adapted to this new way of thinking around skills, but also adapted even that approach as new technologies emerged, and
Yep.
making sure that it is not, we're layering old tech on, or new tech on old ways of thinking, but really how do we dismantle and rebuild it for this new world of work, for this, this
Yep.
transformation that is facing us. Thank you so much for your time today and for giving us a little bit of an insight into the work that you are doing at Comcast. I know it's really heartening for people to hear, and also to be very transparent. There were challenges. It wasn't an easy road. It's a journey rather than a trajectory. But it's great to see
Absolutely.
that you are on that and to hear your passion for making it real for everybody, not just as a business strategy, but for every individual as well.
Well, thank you, Hannah. This is a great dialogue today. I was happy to chat.